It's 2025, and by now, we all realize the importance of environment, renewable resources, greener planet, waste management, and everything. But a passionate visionary entrepreneur realized this way back in 2016. She worked very closely at the grassroots levels and witnessed the harsh reality of India's waste crisis. And that moment, she realized that this is not going to happen for so long. This way, a new journey started towards a sustainable world. And today, we have Bare Necessities, India's leading zero waste brand with a mission to building personal and lifestyle product. And Bare Necessities is not just a brand, it's a movement towards educating our community, our society towards a cleaner planet. And we are so excited and blessed to have that visionary entrepreneurial leader with us today in the room. Seher Mansoor, an alum from University of Cambridge, is dedicated in creating sustainable solutions globally. With over 10 years of experience in environmental sector, she has worked across continents and contributed to World Health Organization. Today, Seher and her vision is proudly recognized nationally and internationally, including Harper Bazaar, Google India, Al Jazeera, India Today, and the list goes on. In 2022, Seher has been awarded by the Cartier Young Leader Award. Seher, I know that I am not able to do the justice to your introduction and the contributions that you have made to the community and the society out there. So I would like to hand it over floor to you now. So over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that very generous introduction. I think you're making me sound much cooler than I already am. I'm really excited to get to know all of you and hear more about your small businesses and growing businesses. I've been in your shoes. I've also started a business against all odds, and especially in the stage where you are of your business. Um, you could have a lot of doubt, you could have a lot of questions. So let's definitely spend a lot of time at the end for Q&A to try and answer those questions, and feel free to ask anything. I'll go ahead and share a little bit about my story and what got me started, and try and also think about some of the lessons in this exact stage of where I am as well. I actually got to see, I looked at the stage of, so sorry, one second. I don't have share screening. Is that, can that be enabled for me, please?
Yes, I've done that.
So I was actually, thank you. Had the pleasure of actually really yeah, I grew up in Bangalore, like a lot of, and I spent a lot of time in Cubbon Park. A lot of our holidays meant coffee picking, jumping into waterfalls. Nature basically had a huge element to play in all of our weekends and things like that. And for my undergrad, I went to a small liberal arts school in Los Angeles. I was really lucky to be on a scholarship. It wasn't a full ride, so I did have three other jobs on campus. I gave tours of my college. I worked at the international students office, and I wrote for them a magazine. I wrote for the newspaper. Um, I picked up shifts at anything. If like there was a professors kids that needed babysitting, I would do that. And my next 2 years, I also was a resident advisor on campus, which meant I basically would get free housing and free meal plan in exchange for being a first responder in case anything happened. If anyone needed to be transported to the hospital, or just being like a big sister like figure. And that was huge because that really was a great way for me to get a sense of responsibility, but also for me to really earn my way through college. And I think not beyond all of that, I also really understood what education of the whole person actually meant. Because in India, my education system, and maybe a lot of you might also have this experience where it was so much focused on board exams and getting the certain number, grades, and all of that. And I think for the first time, I truly kind of educated my heart and my mind in a way that I wanted to. So it was really kind of nourishing. And, it was just 30 kids in a class. The professors knew you by research interest and all of that. So for my graduation, I actually decorated my hat that said "Thanks, Mom." And this is my mom actually tearing up when she, hugged me on my graduation day because she had no idea I did this as well. So fast forward a few years, I was on this academic journey. On my third year of college, I actually watched a video. It was actually world religions and ecology. So, we were all looking at different traditions and how practically every religion has, nature plays a huge sacred part. So it's a very interesting course. Beyond that, I watched a short documentary of this lady named Pia Johnson, and essentially that little jar that she's holding, that is all of the trash that her two kids and her husband had produced in like 4 years or something crazy like that. And I remember being really inspired, but also thinking, that's impossible. I'm a poor college student. That's just too aspirational. I think that's never going to happen. Of course, it inspired me to do few things like carry my own water bottle and stuff like that. So, I basically went to my college dean, or kind of like the equivalent of a headmaster. And I said, you know what, you don't have the major I want. So he said, okay, what do you mean? I said, I want to take environmental engineering in the engineering department. I want to take environmental science in the science department. I want to take that environmental policy class in the political science department. So he said, okay, fine, sit down. And I literally made my own major, my second major, which was, essentially taking all these courses that I wanted. It's actually now actually offered as a degree, environmental science, environmental planning, and interdisciplinary studies is actually offered in my university now as like a major as well. So fast forward again to this phase of being a third year in college. I then moved on to um, Cambridge, where I did my master's in environmental law and environmental economics. And this, I was really, really grateful. But I was on a complete full ride scholarship. And, I applied to, I think, like 100 scholarships. And I finally got the Rotary scholarship. So it was really, really great because I also have learning disabilities growing up. So I'm dyslexic. I read very slowly and I write very slowly. So which meant in, I practically never finished an exam because I just write slower than I think. But then in my 11th and 12th, my psychology teacher noticed. So I did like this formal testing, and they actually realized that I am dyslexic, and I would get then extra time to do my exams in 11th and 12th, with the ISC board certifying it and everything, which had a huge impact on my grades as well. And so yeah, just being a little dyslexic kid who practically never finished her exams to being at Cambridge, it was quite a journey. I never thought I would be there. But also I think I had my heart set on it because I only applied to one college. I said, I'm going to go to Cambridge or I'm not going anywhere. So I you know and then even when I got in, I was like, okay, fine, but I need to find a way to get the scholarship. So I literally wrote to everyone I know, applied to as many scholarships as I possibly can, and against all odds, again, that happened, and I'm so grateful that I got that opportunity. Uh, then another really cool thing that happened was I was presenting my research in Cambridge, at this kind of graduate event, and someone who walked by there was really interested by what I did. And I was looking at mobile health or actually I was looking at how we could use mobile devices as a way to engage with citizens, etc. Anyway, that landed me getting a job at the United Nations in Geneva post my graduation, which was again a really, really amazing experience. But it felt a little too fancy. It felt a little too disconnected from the real world. So I moved back home to Bangalore and I started to work in the solar energy access space. So I primarily worked in rural Karnataka, solarizing, hospitals just for lighting needs, fan needs. I worked with women who had a sewing machine, who are making 4 kurtas, and now with predictable energy supply are making 8 kurtas. So those were the types of projects that I worked on, which was really really fulfilling. um, it was not philanthropy, it was, you know end users like this woman who's making vermicelli, who actually paid for her solar uh, light as well. So fast forward that, I was working there, and everyone actually in office knew that I was obsessed about my waste. I started the waste segregation at office and the composter at office and things like that. So there was actually this waste picker community very close to our Bangalore International Airport, and essentially over there, they were living in blue top home housing, very informal housing, and essentially they tried to tell me, you said you're obsessed about waste, you should work on this project. So I did, and I followed these amazing people from 5 a.m. to like 9 a.m. on my cycle in the morning, noticing the conditions in which they were segregating all of our waste. And I was just really, it's really kind of um, heartbroken seeing what I was seeing on the ground, right? Because they're looking at all, going through all of this waste with their bare naked hands. And this really made me think about the social justice issues kind of associated with our waste problem. That's someone's dad, that's someone's brother, and they're possibly losing their thumbs because of going through broken glass amidst broken diapers and sanitary napkins and things like that. And that's when I actually thought back to my year at college, where I watched that lady who had made such little waste. And that's when I attempted to start living the zero waste lifestyle. So I started to, carry my own jars everywhere, started to shop package free. I started to compost all of my food waste, go to the market with my own dabbas and get whatever I wanted. Even to ice cream, take my own dabba. uh, I painted my composting bin to give it like all of this pride. Started to grow my own herbs. Even when I'm cycling, biking, carry my own snacks that are all package free. I started to use a menstrual cup. I started to carry again my snacks everywhere. You can see I'm a very hungry, snackable person, so I love carrying all of my snacks always. But investing in an ink pen, you know just fixing up my bag whenever I needed to, rather than buying something new every time. And I'm going to skip this one, but basically my in my journey I realized that a lot of these things that I was doing to try and reduce my footprint are actually very inherent to part of our Indian culture, right? It's very Indian. And some examples of that are our bazaars. you know it's very democratic, you can buy as much as you need. The stainless steel tiffin, which is a great example of what zero waste in action can actually look like. Essentially, I thought that all of our products, from the minute we wake up to the minute we sleep, they're all kind of designed in a way that they need to land up in our landfills, or they're like destined to land up in landfills, right? So that's why I thought we should create a company that has zero waste products that are basically designed not to land up in our oceans and landfills. And that's kind of what led me to start Bare Necessities. And this is a great visual. You need one stainless steel straw that's like food grade certified stainless steel, and you can avoid all these 1,000 plastic straws that you can find in this. I was actually in Kochi when I took this photo, and it's so beautiful. It's one of my favorite places. But it was just, the amount of trash everywhere has become so much. So that's essentially why we started Bare Necessities. And what we do here is create high quality kick-ass products in very very innovative formats of products as well. We create sustainability courses and books, online courses, as well as we have a Penguin published book. We make all of our products in India. All of our formulation is really effective and toxin free, and we have all of our ISOs, all of our certifications essentially in place. And most excited we are B Corp certified. And essentially, B Corp is the certification that is kind of a gold standard when it comes to environmental and social well-being. And it's quite hard to get. It takes a year and a half of due diligence to actually finally get it. And I'm very happy that we got a score of 103 to actually get certified. And you only need 80 to get certified. And we are India's first FMCG brand to be B Corp certified. So a little bit about where we source, how we package our products. All of our products are designed in a way that they're either completely recompostable, or their packaging is recyclable, or their packaging is reusable. So the idea is that nothing lands up in our oceans and landfills. And the way we source, we have like 100 plus vendors that we source from all over the country. Lavender from Kashmir, coconut oil from Kerala, cacao butter from Auroville. So we really kind of go the extra mile on sourcing. And some of the people that I actually currently source from are the vendors I worked with in my last job at the solar energy company. Very proud to share that we have a 100% woman-run production team, warehousing team. A lot of them, this is their first job, which I'm really, really proud of that. Which meant financial inclusion, for a lot of them for the first time. And you know this is us. We've grown from a one-person team to a nice, lovely team with these certifications to our name as well. And I already kind of shared a little bit about B Corp, but really it just means that you care about people, planet, and profit all in the same breath. And you're not just prioritizing profit and financial bottom line as only. Coming more to like entrepreneurship and some lessons, and some of this, I think it looks very glamorous. I think everyone wants to be an entrepreneur because it looks very sexy, it looks very fun, it looks like you're always having a blast, you're always achieving these milestones, etc. But what you don't get to see is the late nights to create products, the amount of boxes you're holding, dispatching, carrying yourself. um, you know so I think that's just in terms of entrepreneurship. I just wanted to share some, like, whatever you're going through right now, I've been there. The doubt, or the late nights, it seems like you're just always working and nothing is really adding up. I've been there too. Or everyone, when you meet them, says, oh, you're doing so well, I saw that great new reel, etc. But actually you're just like having a lot of self-doubt. And I think all of that is completely valid. But it's just up to us to kind of take it in our stride and kind of keep working through it. So I think these have been some of our partners in the past. I guess I also want to share about, in terms of the entrepreneurship lessons. Raising capital was a big one. Like, it was kind of hard for me to raise capital, and I don't know if it was because I was a single female founder trying to raise capital, or if sustainability wasn't interesting enough to the investors I was talking to. But that also gave me a lot of kind of self doubt if I'm doing the right thing or not. But I think one thing that really helped me was to have a very basic first notebook, and then it was an Excel of what is my financial plan. Like, how much am I making? How much are my expenses? And what is my profit, right? So understanding these concepts. And now there are some amazing videos on all of this, and you're in this program, so I'm sure you're learning. But even if you don't understand it in that 1 hour, like, just be sure to learn and never stop learning. um, and be really, really clear on your financials. I think that's something that, don't ever say like, oh, my CA got it, or I let my accounts person reply to you, or whatever. Just know your finances in and out. Always have things written down. Like, if you are in a partnership with someone, create that partnership deed. If things go south or whatever, you have something in written as well. So always, and so those are some really important things that I learned. And invest in a good CA from day one. So make sure you're always filing your taxes from day one, and it's all kind of like really sorted from day one as well. So I think those are some things that I really kind of learned, some the hard way as well. So yeah, those are just a few things I wanted to share. I also want to share some cool partnerships. Like IKEA is a furniture company. I never thought they would partner with us because I'm not selling furniture. But I love them as a brand and they really care about sustainability. So I think here it was quite audacious. I met someone actually at a party, and he worked at IKEA, and he was, you know, yeah, he was like literally at this party that I went to, and I asked him for his email, and I was like, talking to him, etc. And then he forwarded this along to another colleague. It took a year and a half for us to onboard and for us to get this partnership off the ground. And among that 1.5 year, I could have quit any time. But it's been amazing since we did partner, and they've been our partner now for 3 years. And it's a recurring kind of revenue stream. It's a recurring kind of partnership, right? So, which means there is an inflow of capital that's coming regularly at regular intervals of time, which has been really, really phenomenal. And we do these fun talks and workshops around sustainability to make it very fun, easy, and accessible as well. We always are planning things that are different based on the theme as well. So that's something I learned from IKEA is like this partnership, which is wherever you are, kind of subtly. It's not. I didn't go there with the intent to the party with the intention of networking. I was just going there because it was my cousin's birthday party. But you be fun, just be nice to people, talk to people. You never know, who they are, where they're working, and so that's something that I learned from that. Um, and then this is our online courses were then used currently being used by Cognizant, and it's currently in their own kind of learning management software, which is a really cool partnership, like partnering up with a real big company as well. I think what I learned from this was the pandemic actually made us stop selling products because supply chains were massively impacted, and but we had all this knowledge around sustainability. So we took all this knowledge and we made these online courses. So it was kind of actually a pivot, but it was just something to do to keep the lights on, to pay everyone's salary so I didn't have to fire anyone. And suddenly this alternative revenue stream in the pandemic became actually a successful initiative that has kind of kept going. So I did it out of desperation, the online courses around sustainability, but actually it became something that has continued to live on. It's kind of a nice legacy because once we create the content, again, it's a source of revenue. It keeps going essentially. So uh, what I learned from this was like even in your lowest low and you think is you're done, you're probably going to close down. Um, Always think that what is the other alternative, and think out of the box. And in that situation, it will seem hard, but what will come and what will follow after that, you never know. It might just actually surprise you. So yeah, these have just been some partners that we've worked with as well. I think sometimes just positioning your products to some of your potential clients is really important as a founder, because for say Royal Enfield, um, you know, they really care about they doing this. They basically try and get people to explore different parts of India, right? So this trip they've done to Leh, for example, and the idea is to travel with purpose and to leave no footprint behind. So we partnered with them and pitched this zero waste case that they can take with them and give to each rider. So wherever they go, they can have coffee or tea in our collapsible steel cups. So there's no plastic in our. If they're having any, I don't know, nadal pani or anything, they have our stainless steel straw, a bamboo toothbrush, a spoon and fork for their Maggie, so they don't have to use the plastic ones. And so I think positioning, like what is your client looking for, and seeing how you can make that happen as well is really important. To know who your audience is and like constantly speak to them is really important. That's what I learned through this partnership as well. These are some hotels that we are at as well, and that's similar message I think from the previous one. Um, just quickly towards the end, summarizing this a little bit about our impact and the impact we've created in terms of the plastic we've diverted, the jobs we've created, the livelihoods we've impacted directly and also some indirectly. I think I kind of already shared, but I'm really excited about creating dignified green jobs for our women. And I think I really want to continue to add more good quality jobs at Bare Necessities through our warehousing team as well. And, we have these team meetings where we talk about financial inclusion, we watch a documentary, we might just play board games, we've done painting. So I think it's also about upskilling our team and kind of investing in our team, and who we're building with, because happy to share that the production team and warehousing team, most of them have been here for 4 years, 3 years, as well. So I'm really really happy and grateful for them to be on this journey with me as well. I think I'll stop there. This is just more about our impact and how we source and things like that. But I would love to also understand more about where you guys are, or where you girls are, and I'd love to answer any questions as well. And Yeah, let's see how we can take this forward.
Thank you so much, Sahir. And I love the way you honestly talked about your journey, your struggle, and how you went to Cambridge. Because at one moment of our life, we think about that education, or maybe we are good at academics. That is something which will decide our future or which will decide our career. And if we fail there, we will be able to fail in our life or not be able to do anything. So thank you so much for being vulnerable and being open to us as well. And I know that moment when I was watching everyone's face and they've been like super proud of you. We all are proud of you for creating that impact, and at the same time for being a role model that we can say to ourselves that yes, we will be able to move ahead and we have someone to look up to for sure. And with this, we would like to move on to our next segment. So we have crafted a few questions for Seher, but at the same time, we would love to hear from our shepreneurs, from our joinees as well. Craft your questions, draft your questions. But before that, Seher, I have a question for you.
Sure.
So you have more than 10 years of entrepreneurial journey experience. So over that time, I would really like to know, does at any moment you felt like that being a woman or being a Muslim woman posed as a challenge for you? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely, like when I'm with investors, etc. At first, especially when I started the company, I was, I think 23 or something, or 24, and I was starting a very small way first. Um, so yeah, definitely, I felt at a disadvantage. Um, you know, s- yeah, definitely, a lot of things didn't feel quite super like comfortable. Um, and I think I think what really helped me was just growing the business, right? I think people were underestimating me. I think people were not excited to give me funding, or uh, didn't think I would make it. Um, you know, didn't think sustainability was a problem or climate change is an issue, all of that definitely. But then I decided to just put my head down and build a really good company, build a really kick-ass social media presence. I did this from day one. It was just me on my phone, taking all the photos, etc. um, so I think I just took myself really seriously, started taking the business very seriously, and just building. And then I had, the followers grew. I had investors reaching out to me via LinkedIn to invest in me. So all of that followed. um, so I think when you faced all that rejection, just channel that towards building. I think that's what really helped me.
And within that, Sahar, you might have faced certain challenges, or maybe you have committed certain mistakes. So, what are some of the mistakes you felt like you really don't want any other entrepreneur or any other women out there doing it? So, how will you club those mistakes? Or
Yeah,
maybe
for sure.
learnings, we can say learnings. mistakes, but
Yeah. Actually, before that also, talking, just being real and also talking about biases and stuff here. Uh, I think when Kashmir stuff happened, and I was quite outspoken on my social media, and I'm also quite I was quite an activist in undergrad as well. So I was quite just kind of talking about how it's crazy that um, overnight things are being done in the parliament without any consent or following parliamentary processes, and it was very systematically done in Kashmir, and things like that. And I know there were people who replied on, and this was not, I did it on my personal account, but people kind of commented on the bare necessities page with comments saying like, oh, at one point I don't want to buy from a Muslim women's brand or a liberal Muslims brand or something like that. Um, so I think if you're gonna you have to be able if you're gonna put your content out there like that, then you have to be open to also kind of answering those questions and that those kind of worms. But even if it's not on your company platform, people will find their way to come to you. So there will always be people who want to get you down, but it's really up to you how you deal with it. So I didn't get into any chatting war with them or anything. Just delete that comment and move on. So I think that's something that I wanted to share. So you might face bias. They might comment about your headscarf. They might comment about your last name or whatever. But just prove them wrong. I think that's the best thing that you can do is prove them wrong. Be like so successful that they wish they gave you that check. Be so successful that they wish they never made fun of your headscarf. And I think that's what's really important. I also really care about religious diversity. I think that's one of India's best strengths. I went to a Catholic school all my life. I have so many Parsi friends, Hindu friends, Christian friends, Muslim friends. Our team is extremely religiously diverse, which is great because being a quick commerce company, on Diwali, I have Zainab and Tabu coming in doing dispatches. And then on Eid, when they are off, I have Saranya and Bhuvana coming in. So that is our strength. So I think that's something that I also don't shy away from as well. So that's one. I think things that you shouldn't do. I said this, but know your money, like know your numbers. Even if it's complicated or you're scared, start in a notebook or start in a very simple, basic Excel with just 3 columns, 4 columns, and then slowly you can build a more sophisticated financial spreadsheet. But you should know how much you're making, how much is going in expenses, and what is your profit. These 3 things always you need to know that. Um, these broad strokes definitely. And mistakes, the if you can be a sole proprietorship as long as you can, okay, because there's no extra compliances around it. um, I had to convert to be a private limited when I kind of took an investment, and the compliances are so much, like you have to file this form with ROC, you have to share this, you have to like this, like insane amount of paperwork every few months, and you have to have AGM and all these meetings and the boards, and there's just too much processes. And I had my college senior or school senior, sorry, um, be my company secretariat for all of these important things. Because I was like, I thought I knew her, I trust her, whatever. But unfortunately, she made so many mistakes, and I was a young entrepreneur. I didn't know better, and I didn't know enough about it to even double check her work or anything, right? So and the mistakes just kept adding on. And then finally, when I was looking for a larger round of investment, I had a due diligence on the company, and they look at all your financials, all your company sector. It's like 3 months of just data sharing. And they literally just want access to your Zoho, they want access to your website. It's like a 360-degree due diligence, right? And they look at every transaction, every pay slip. So always keep that all very much in order from day one. You don't want to try and later on create all this paperwork at the end. But essentially, uh, yeah, and then they found out these mistakes, and some of these mistakes cannot be rectified. They're already filed with ROC, they're already filed with the Companies Act of India, and so unfortunately can't do much about it. So now whenever, and then I got a new CS since, I got a new company secretariat since, but I unfortunately always have to now explain these errors. So do your due diligence, do your research and get a good CA and a good company secretariat from day one, and have a monthly setup with them, a meeting with them, or a weekly setup with them, or or once in 2 months. And they need to be accessible and know you, and you need to know them, and they need to know your business well, and build that rapport with that. So it kind of goes really, really smoothly from day one, as well. So I think that's something that, some advice, a mistake that I did, I wish I didn't do. And it's become a heavy one, because now every time I do a due diligence, I have to explain for some mistakes that, someone has done. Yeah.
I love the way Seher you explain the mistake part and why it is so important to know the core of your business as well, even when you have other team members or other people who are concerned about it, to know the details and depth of your business. And before opening up the question to our shapepreneurs, just one last question from my end, Seher. So, over the last 2 3 years, Ledba has been working with the shapepreneurs, and we've been talking to the entrepreneurs what they need, what more we can do, how to craft the program. And there is this one challenge that we have particularly faced within the Muslim women entrepreneurs, and that is they are very happy and satisfied wherever they are. So when we are asking them that, you have the chance to grow, you have a chance to upscale, you have a chance to get more opportunities, or you have a chance to even register, they've been like, we are absolutely okay and everything is going good, or maybe most of the time they undermine themselves. So what are your some of the tips or your suggestions to all of us and to those entrepreneurs especially?
um, that's a tough one because it's so personal. But I would say that we owe it to ourselves to dream a little, and we owe it to ourselves to also be good role models for other women. So, I want to give you an example of a girl on our team. Her name is Shabreen. Um, she was the neighbor of a girl who was on my manufacturing team. She just came with her to work one day. I didn't ask for her. And then she said, you know what, I'm looking for a job. I said, yeah, I'm not hiring. So she said, you know what, I'll do a really good job and I'll join on the manufacturing team. I'll do a really good job. I promise you, you will want to make me a full time employee. I said, okay, fine, let's do it. And then she was doing really well. She was really smart. She was, having a lot of attention to detail. She was excited. She was ambitious. She became the head of the manufacturing team. Then she became head of the like an assistant operations person as well on the team. In COVID, when they weren't coming into office of because of the pandemic, she would take a bike in the community. I don't know whose bike, but she learned how to ride a bike. And then she, at the end of the pandemic, bought herself a second-hand bike. She was saving, and she took a interest-free loan from me. She did saving all these things, and she and her sister together bought a house for her family. So I think if little Shabreen from, you know, no formal schooling, um and just a pocket full of dreams can have that much thing to achieve all these milestones of buying her family a house, teaching herself how to ride a bike, buying a bike, learning computers, another thing. We paid for her computer course, but she learned how to do that, and can be so excited and ambitious. Then we owe it to ourselves to be more excited and ambitious and be good role models for our daughters, for our nieces. And I think when we have more power, we can also share that. That means you can create more livelihood opportunities in whatever business you are doing. Imagine if you are creating 10, 30, 100 shabus, right? How cool is that? So I think, don't underestimate the.
Seher, you are mute. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I said if you basically if you stop, if you're not growing, you're maybe stopping 100 Shabrins from growing.
And yeah, there's this one saying as well that if you educate one woman in your family, you are educating your whole bloodlines. So yeah, it's high time for each one of us to work for our dreams, take that step. And with this, we are open to the Q&A to our joinees, to our attendees, and to our shepreneurs. So please feel free to raise your hand, and we are going to take the questions accordingly. So please feel free to take the space, and no question is a silly question, no doubt is a silly doubt, so please feel free to make this out loud. This is place. And first we would like to go ahead with the shepreneurs, and definitely we'll come back with the accelerator participants. So over to you, Najmus.
Hi, my name is Najma Sahar Shevani, and my page name is business name is Funky Vibes Official. Basically, it's a page. Uh, I make handmade gifts like
Awesome.
frames or hampers for all occasions,
Cool.
like written hampers for weddings and all,
Nice.
nikanamas.
Yeah.
So basically, my question is, how can we collab with reputed brands like for corporate gifting or for big weddings or for elite written gifts favor? How can we collab with them, or how
Yeah.
can we approach with them? And my second question is, if I want to collab with your brand, so like, are you up to collaboration with the small businesses, or like, what will be the procedure and all the things?
Yeah, sure. One is like you have to pitch them an idea. If you want to collaborate with, who is your dream brand that you want to collaborate with, right? Is it like a Pernia pop up, or is it whoever is a wedding, whoever it is, you have to pitch them an idea. What you can do, why you can do it, how you can do it in their brand colors, why they should choose you. So send them a really lovely email, do cold emails, do cold calling, do LinkedIn reach outs, go to the store with the samples, create a mock up and show them. And then kind of, that's how you can possibly take it forward. And you can also DM them, obviously. So try all routes. And you never know which route will actually work. And yeah, for sure, feel free to always reach out to me. I actually put my email here and my LinkedIn there as well. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, we can take it from there. Awesome.
We have already connected on LinkedIn.
Perfect. Awesome. So you can DM me there.
Sounds good. So now we like to go ahead to Ikra.
Hello, so I am Ikra. I am from Bombay and I was formerly like a research assistant at IIT Bombay. And then I decided to start my own school. So the idea of the school is to start a reinvented school where kids don't like learn just academics, but also like do a lot of real world stuff. So I'm
Amazing.
working with the underserved community in like a pocket of Bombay. And I know that you also like work with shifting mindsets. And for the community that we serve, there's this mindset that academic has to be about grades, like you were talking about. And although like the narrative has shifted globally that we need more of like workforce readiness skills and all of it, but it hasn't shifted for these communities. So I would like to understand, how did you work? Like, what strategies help you shift people from resistance to curiosity? Because in your case it's the same, that you've built um, curiosity in sustainability, and you've shifted mindsets towards being sustainable because that wasn't around.
Yeah.
um, and how did you like push for systemic change while not making people around you feel alienated towards what you're doing?
Yeah, great question. First of all, great work, Ikra, such meaningful work. And yeah, I think for me, not making them feel like it's the same thing with the vegan movement or the zero waste movement, not feeling like, oh, this is the only way, and not, this is the only way, or like highway or whatever that saying is. For me, it was really about finding co-benefits. So, um, for example, with my mom, she didn't really care that it was in plastic or not in plastic when I first started my low waste journey. But I started to get this cardboard box of fresh combination of fruits and veggies from a farm in Ooty, delivered to us a doorstep every day, 5 a.m. in the morning, every Tuesday. And she just loved the quality of the food. The produce of the food was so good, and she's really into wellness and yoga and walking and all of that. And for her, it was not so much that the fruit and vegetable was coming in a zero waste manner, but more that it was just so fresh and so good. So that was the co-benefit that I found with my mom, for example. So for some communities, it might be for me finding the co-benefit in finances, because that always helps. Like when I try and tell people, oh, zero waste living is amazing, they're like, yeah, whatever. But if I say, if you invest in one menstrual cup, uh, it's maybe 1,000 rupees upfront, but you can save 2 lakh rupees in your lifetime instead of buying, post, pads and tampons every month. Then they're like, oh, okay, they're listening. So I found a financial incentive there. So depends on who you're talking to and finding a co-benefit that interests them enough. And it's often finance. So if you can tell them that if they go through this program, even if they have, even a B plus student or C plus student, doesn't matter, but with these kind of skills can earn so much money, you have an audience, I think.
Thanks a lot. That was helpful.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you so much, Ikram. So, what do you, Fahima?
Hi, Sahir. I'm Fahima Iqbal. I am an artist and an entrepreneur. So I own an imitation jewelry brand as well as an Islamic stationery brand. So the question that I want to ask is that in the beginning, obviously, when you were handling it all by yourself, it would have been like super overwhelming.
Yeah.
So how do you manage then? And also, as a small creative brand owner, I find it hard to imagine scaling up. So and like managing a team in the future. So when bare necessity started to grow, how did you manage a new team and also like give in your personal touch to everything?
Yeah, for sure. For sure, it was slow and steady. Like, first, it was just me and the manufacturing girls. Then slowly, I onboarded like myself 10 stores, but again, it was one by one. And then I decided, and I was printing out the little delivery slips and what inventory is going out to each store, etc. And then I hired my operations hire, right? That was one. That's Saraswati Didi. So yeah, that's basically I think it has to be by phase what the kind of company needs. Make sure that you are setting a culture though for the organization. So then they all get the vibe and the how you would do it. So whenever they are doing something, they think, okay, how would Seher do it? And that's kind of the touch that they hopefully apply, in what they're doing. So I think for us it was team meetings. Friday team meetings really set our culture. Like I said, we've done painting, we've gone for a little light exhibition, we've just played board games. We have knowledge sessions, so where each person, each teammate might lead and share a little bit about something that they're really interested about. One employee shared about health and wellness and why that's important to them. One person shared about heritage and what that means to them, and how culture can be so intangible. It could be, of course, tangible in these beautiful monuments, but intangible in the recipes, in the textiles, that each state has, etc. So it's diverse. So I feel that keeps us excited to meet for our team meeting, keeps the enthusiasm intact, but also sets the culture. And I think whether you have, I think that's been really important for us as a team to set that up. And then one-on-ones with the team. So being very, very clear on how you track it, and what their goals are, what they're doing this week, what they're doing on a quarter, and then syncing up with them on a weekly basis. That makes that touch point, make sure that the culture again is being intact, or the knowledge that you're transferring is being intact. So that's kind of how we've done that at Bare Necessities, but I'm sure you learn more through the program at your the accelerator as well. I hope
Thank
that
you.
helps.
Thank you, Fahima. Over to you, Huma.
Hello, Seher. I am Huma Amir. Right now, I am running a small business of mine that is of Islamic calligraphy and handmade gifts. So, yeah, I'm a dietitian by profession. So, right now, I have just completed my master's and I want to start my another business of it must be of service based. Like I have a business of product based. Now I want to start something of service based. As a dietitian, I want to offer them diet charts and all, counseling and all. Yeah, so I want to start it, but right now I'm in that phase of my life that I start it or not. Like I already have one business, and oftentimes people think like or say even sometimes your family think like you are doing like time pass or something, go get a job or something like that. So should I start it or not? Like you have already started one of your business, and it is now it is very much like I love your idea and how you have pitched it. So yeah, now you have that idea. You can tell me that should I start it on early basis? Like I have to done my internship after this. So should I do it with my internship or should I start after completing my internship? Like, what's your perspective on early starting or waiting for a long time? So yeah, that's my
Cool.
question.
Yeah, got it. Thanks so much for your question. Congratulations, you have so many talents. So I would say one is I found working for someone and a lot like helped me a lot because whether that's an internship or a fellowship or whatever, it gives me an insight into whether I would like to do that on a daily basis. And you also get paid to make mistakes. So work for someone else, maybe who's a nutritionist or maybe work at a hospital that's or intern at a hospital or whatever that has a nutrition team that's working with clients. I think that always helps because you get so much knowledge, in a short period of time, and you basically won't maybe make those same mistakes uh, in the business that you're building, right? So it just shaves off some time and mistakes if you were going to start building from scratch. I found that helpful. So even when I moved back to India, and then the other thing is MVP, which is I'm sure you've heard this word before, but is minimum viable product. So first create your MVP, right? Suppose you are saying that I want to build out this nutrition um, company and consultancy to do work one-on-one with clients. um, See if you can create a small pilot of sorts. How much time will you spend on coaching? um, how much are they willing to pay? How many such clients can you have? And how much pay can you get in a month at the best case scenario, and then the worst case scenario. If you're happy with that, you know, if you're happy with the worst case and best case scenario, that's you're saying, okay, fine, I can get started. So I think that framework is really important to think through. But if you're nervous to start, you're having second thoughts, etc., an internship is a great place to get all the knowledge, get paid, learn everything, and then apply it once you start your own practice. And then, other than that, the other decisions are yours, obviously. But I just found that this is kind of a useful way to think about it. I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you so much. But it's like if I start early, it will like
So,
in 2 3 years
I'm
maybe.
trying to
Yeah,
interrupt.
yeah,
Yeah, for
yeah,
being
yes,
mindful of
yes.
time and for everyone being out there. So, being mindful of everyone's time, please be brief with your questions, and we'll try to cover up with the more questions. So, over to you, Seher.
Assalamu alaikum. Hi,
Hi.
everybody. Hi, Seher. From one Seher to another.
I know. Hi, Seher.
Yeah. So I am Seher Mushtaq. I'm from Kashmir. I'm a medical doctor by profession. And I'm also kind of reframing and rebuilding my hospitality business with my parents and their
Amazing.
legacy. I'm trying to rebuild it.
Mhm.
So we are just so amazed and thrilled to be a part of your journey. It is so it's so heartfelt and heartwarming. So many congratulations from our
So thank
entire cohort to you and entire led by team. They've already, like, you are inspiration for us. A very short and basic question: that what do you think was the most strongest and profound challenge that you faced while starting, or while at the beginning of your startup, and how did you try to manage it and overcome it?
Thank you, first of all, Sahar, for being so generous with your words. Um, Gosh, challenges. I think I shared a few.
Yeah, you
What
did. But what was the
what
most profound one? Yeah.
was the most challenging? Um, I think so. I mean, I didn't share this, but my like I lost my dad when I was very little. I lost my dad when I was 8, and in this horrible accident while I was crossing the road with him. Um, and overnight our financial situation changed, right? Because I don't know this. It, I, the Even in Islam, I think you the women's land rights, women's things on money, you get less than anyway. But basically, our financial situation changed overnight. My dad was the oldest brother, and like put all heart into the family, but nothing was in his name, and it was just a horrible time. And uh, basically, we stopped going out on Sunday nights for a dinner, or we just it was very it was a anyway, it was really a tough time. But I think from then I started to think about I think I was filled with a poverty mindset from that little 8-year-old stage. So I think my biggest challenge is breaking away from a poverty mindset and thinking of a prosperity mindset, because I mindset I grew up with from then on was just work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard, work hard, and get that scholarship, make it easy on mom, and that's the only thing I knew. But in the process, I forgot to teach myself about um, financial acumen, about what does that mean when you get I just basically needed to switch my mind around my relationship with money, and that was a really big one for me. And even now, if I go out to eat, I won't order like a soda water or a drink, like a juice or anything like that, because when we did start going out as a family, finally, many years after my dad passed, that was a way to reduce the money, right? The amount that the bill would be at the end of the day. So we would just have food and then, go back home or whatever. And if we all four got a juice, me, my mom, and my three sisters, that would make the bill more. So even till now, when I go out, I have to say, what, I have money to order myself a kombucha in addition to my meal. So it took a lot of rewiring of the brain and that scarcity mindset to prosperity mindset, which was honestly is still a work in progress. But I think it was really hard to rewire my brain around finances and being more confident about it, just feeling like prosperity is coming my way and manifesting abundance.
More power to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Seher, for sharing this. And we've been on time, but would love to ask from you, Seher, if you would like to take one or two more questions.
Yeah, we have 3 more hands or 4 more hands. We can do it. Let's do it. I'll be
Yeah,
quick.
so go ahead.
Who's next?
Zoha, if you would like to go ahead next.
Hello, I'm Zoha Asad. I
Hi.
am the owner of Dasturi Qalam, an Arabic calligraphy brand. So I would like to make my brand more sustainable. And in the start, how I started, I made 200 bookmarks from wedding envelopes. So
Lovely.
that was my first product. But now I feel like I my brand is not sustainable at all. And as you've mentioned, that bare necessities, it follows a cradle to cradle approach, ensuring sustainability. So, could you please share how you implemented this in practice with sustainable packaging? Because sustainable packaging is often more effective, most more expensive, and like what cost-effective strategies would you suggest for small artisans like myself, so that I can build a strong brand without compromising on sustainability?
Yeah, great question. So one is be really creative. My printer, we ask him for paper scraps that we put in our boxes to stuff them. So we're not using plastic bubble wrap, but we're also not, that's what we used to use. So we're not buying additional resources in there. So we're looking at waste as a resource essentially. And before that, I was also using cloth fabric and cloth waste from my local Masood tailor to wrap other things. So their waste became my input. So just be creative, and sustainability doesn't always have to be expensive. And you can get a little custom stamp, you can get a couple of small things done, but that can really enhance your brand visibility and your how you want to kind of have that consumer experience for your end user, without compromising on your sustainability values. We can chat more in detail, but you can kind of drop me maybe a line on LinkedIn. But those are a few things you can kind of do to get started.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Over to you, Tabassum.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Thank you so much
Hi, welcome, Sam.
for doing this session. We are all so grateful. So I'm Tabassum. I'm an Ayurveda doctor, and I run a Ayurvedic natural brand, skincare
Amazing.
brand.
Amazing.
And now my question is, so early in your journey, you have a certain amount of money. So
Yeah.
how do you manage your finances? Like how do you bucket your different needs, and how do you put money in that?
Yeah. So I worked at a solar energy company, and I was basically trying to save up my salary uh, to a point where I got confident to start my brand. Okay, so that was one thing. And I did a pop up, I did a flea market every month. And each flea market, I was launching a new product or testing something new. And then finally, 2 years after working, and maybe a year and a half into building Bear on the side, I quit my job. I also then had a bulk order, like I had a bulk store that I would white label my products for them every month. So I knew that, okay, fine, this company that I'm going to start is going to have a minimum of so much revenue is going to be generated on a monthly level. So at that point, I felt confident to switch from my full-time comfortable paycheck job. I wasn't making a lot of money. I worked at like a non-profit in the solar energy space, but whatever. I felt comfortable to, start my job. How I planned my finances was I was being very lean. My first office was in my mom's garage. Right? I convinced her, can you park outside? I painted it up myself. I asked my one uncle to if he would, do a little bit of the, uh, construction on the inside and stuff like that. I had to put a staircase, had to do a few little things up, and then got friends involved, asked them to come and paint with me. So try to get really thrifty and creative and stuff like that. So yeah, okay, fine, great. So I don't need rent. Next, okay, I'm not going to take salary until the company gets to this stage. So whatever profit we were generating, I kept reinvesting back into the business. Then I started to take a small stipend. Then as the company went to different milestones, I started increasing my salary. So that was one thing. Then always understanding your how much are you making, right? And then how much are you spending on all of your raw materials, all of your overheads. Understanding that and making sure there is always a little bit of profit that you're investing into the growth of the company. So I don't. Can you have a more detailed question? How do I plan my finances? And nowadays you have like Zoho books and stuff, so it's like super organized. Start putting everything, create your accounts clean from day one. It'll just help you in the long run as well. But Tabassum, did I answer your question, or is there something else that you wanted me to answer?
No, I guess it works. Thank you so much, Sahar.
So, Sahar, there is this very interesting question over in the chat box, and it's regarding how important has storytelling been for your brand, and what channels did you use for the same?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a huge part. I just, leveraged social media because that's the free way to market yourself, right? So Instagram, LinkedIn, and we just synced up our Instagram with also our Twitter and Pinterest. So then the same post will kind of keep going up there as well. Um, that's not the best way to do it, but I just, for bandwidth reasons, started with that. Um, I think it's very, very important. I think you are your best marketeer, and if you don't do it, no one else is going to do it for you. And once you do it, and once you start doing it well, and once people start loving it, then they will do it for you. Then word of mouth will just spread. But you have to be your first person who believes in you, tell your story well. If you tell your story well, other people will tell your story for you, right? So I think that's really, really important. And that's something that I think came quite naturally to me. I'm going on sharing about finance because that didn't come easy to me. But actually, this is something that actually came quite easy to me because I just love aesthetics. I love taking photos. And so, just putting it out there, it does not have to be perfect, but just keep putting yourself out there for sure. And now there are such amazing tools like Canva. That's all you need to create anything, good storytelling for any of your brands as well.
So we are over time. So
We have a few more questions. I know, Rizvi, you have your hand up as well. I think we can take that as
yeah,
well.
Rizvi, go ahead.
Thank you,
Last.
thank you, Sahar. Hello, Sahar. So, okay, I'm Rizvi, and I have a faith-based coaching program for driven women named Realign with Rizvi. So, right now, I am at a stage where I'm planning to scale it up and, produce educational contents based on faith and mental health. So, regarding that, I wanted to ask you, like when you were in a stage where you were scaling bare necessities, how did you decide, what product or services to launch next? Or, did you rely on your intuition, research, or what signals made you, told you that your offering truly aligned with your audience needs?
Yeah,
So,
for
yeah.
sure. Great question. I asked them. Just put up a little stories that are fun and playful and say, hey, what would you like next? I'm thinking about this and this. Do a poll, do ask questions, send out a consumer survey to all of your people that have ever taken your services, or even simpler, do a WhatsApp poll. So do it anyhow. For me, I would do pop-ups, right? I'm selling products once a month on weekends, so I'm asking them, hey, what do you think? How do you like the smell? All of that stuff, and all on constantly kind of getting like a feedback loop from them. But I think they will give you the best ideas. So talk to your customers, or even if you just ask them, hey, do you have like 10 minutes to talk to me today? I'm toying with a few ideas and I just wanted to get your opinion on it. And just do a customer survey, call 10 of them for 10 minutes each. So yeah, do all of those, and I think that will help you get the best ideas.
Sounds good. And yes, we are finally on time. And I know, Sahar, that we have taken 10 extra minutes of yours,
No
and
worries.
apologize for that. And just one thing, Sahar, we are so blessed to hear from you. Like, we've been trying to get in touch with you from Jakarta, and we've been so happy that you came to the platform. You share your story, you share your challenges, and at the same time, we all are able to relate to it to the maximum extent we can. And I'm damn sure that today, when we'll go back from this chat, we will be able to work on our things, realign our thoughts, and at the same time see our challenges, and most important, that we'll start doing the things rather than just thinking about it and undermining ourselves. And with this, I would like to really invite the Led by tribes to please thank Seher in their Led by way. So please bring your hearts out. We are going to take this screenshot. So please bring your heart out. Please be on camera, and we are able to. Yes. So thank you so much, Tabassum, for that heart, and would love to see more and more hearts coming in. So here we are going to take this screenshot in the next 1 second. One, two, and 3. Here we go. Another one. 1, 2, 3. Here we go. Amazing, amazing. Perfect. Thank you so much, Sahar, for joining us. And thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It was really lovely getting to know all of you better. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn and love to continue our channels of communication. I'm not always very fast, but I will try.
Absolutely. And thank you so much to the Shipreneurs as well for joining us, for working on your dreams, and at the same time for creating more role models for the community. And with this, I'm signing off from the session. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice day, have a nice week, and keep building for your dreams. So, Allah Hafiz. Bye bye.
Bye.